Padre Pio looked at Beatrice Conti and saw something that made him stop mid-sentence. He had been hearing confessions for 6 hours that morning. He was exhausted. His hands hurt from the stigmata, as they always did by afternoon. But when Beatrice stepped forward in that queue and he looked up at her, at this small woman from Milan in her black mourning dress, her eyes swollen from months of weeping, he suddenly went very still. And then, in the silence of the confessional, Padre Pio wept. Not for her, or not only for her. He wept for the young man he could see, somewhere in the vast intermediate space between this life and the next, who had been watching his mother grieve for 8 months and could not reach her, who could see every candle she lit, who could feel every prayer she offered, and who was being held in place, in part, by the one thing Beatrice did not know she was carrying, a grief that had quietly become an accusation against God. I'm going to tell you today what Padre Pio told Beatrice about purgatory, about what the souls there actually experience when the living weep for them, about what prayers reach them and how, about the hidden connection he revealed between the quality of our grief and the speed of a soul's liberation, and about the one prayer he taught her that changed everything. This is not comfortable knowledge, but it is the most loving knowledge I have ever encountered in 40 years of seeking to understand what happens to the people we lose. Stay with me, because somewhere, right now, someone you love may be waiting for exactly what I'm about to give you. For those of us who have lost someone we loved, the agony is not only in the loss itself, it is in the not knowing. You do not know where they are. You do not know if they can hear you. You do not know if the masses you have offered, the rosaries you have prayed with your fingers going numb in the cold, the candles you have lit at every shrine you could reach, actually arrive at the right destination or dissolve somewhere in the dark between you and them. And if the death was sudden, if there was no last rites, no final confession, no moment of explicit surrender to God at the end, the agony doubles. You find yourself replaying the last conversation, wondering if you said enough of the right things in the years before, wondering if your love, imperfect as it was, communicated something to their soul that might have been the thread of grace that brought them to mercy rather than judgment. Padre Pio spent 43 years in the confessional and 43 years in the spiritual world simultaneously. His bilocation, documented by hundreds of witnesses, was only the most dramatic expression of a permeability to the supernatural that was present in every hour of his life. He prayed for the dead every day. He offered his Mass for specific souls. He described to those he trusted most what he could see in the place of purification and how it functioned. And what he saw contradicts, in the most profound way, the vague and frightened silence that most of us carry about the dead. I've seen it with my own eyes, or rather, I've read it in enough independent sources, in the letters of his spiritual children, in the testimonies collected for his canonization, in the records kept by his brother friars, that I can say with confidence, what Padre Pio understood about purgatory was not theological speculation. It was direct observation. And what he observed is something every person who has lost someone they loved needs to hear. Let me tell you about Beatrice. Beatrice Conti was 48 years old in the autumn of 1957, a schoolteacher from a middle-class neighborhood in Milan, the daughter of Lombard Catholics whose faith was as solid and as unsentimental as the city they lived in. She had one son, Marco. He was 29 years old, an engineer who designed bridges, a quiet and serious young man who attended Mass on Sundays more from habit than from any deeply examined faith, but who was, by all accounts, a gentle and good-hearted person. He was engaged to be married in the spring of 1958. On the 3rd of November 1957, Marco Conti died in a car accident on a wet road outside Milan at 6 in the evening, on his way home from work. He died instantly. There were no last rites. There was no final prayer. There was no moment of formal surrender to God. There was only a wet road, a curve taken too fast, and then silence. Beatrice received the news, standing in her kitchen, still in her apron from preparing dinner. She did not collapse. She did not scream. She became very still in the way that certain kinds of grief make you still. The kind that is too large for the body to process all at once, and so the body simply stops. She stood at the kitchen table for a long time. Then she sat down. Then she began, very quietly, to pray. For the next 8 months, Beatrice Conti prayed with an intensity that her colleagues described as frightening. She attended daily Mass whenever she could. She had 30 Masses offered for Marco's soul in the first month alone. She prayed the Rosary every evening, sometimes twice. She lit candles at 4 different shrines in Milan. She wrote letters to Padre Pio, which she was told might not be answered for months, if at all. She did everything that a faithful Catholic woman in 1958 knew to do for a soul she feared might be in need of mercy. And yet she was not at peace. Something underneath all that prayer was not moving. It was as if she were pushing against a door with all her strength, and the door was not locked, but she could not find the handle. The door, she would later understand, was inside her. I need to pause here and tell you something that I think is important for understanding what follows, because what Beatrice was experiencing in those 8 months is not unusual. It is, in fact, the most common form of grief among people of faith who lose someone they love suddenly and without preparation. It has a particular texture that distinguishes it from ordinary grief. Ordinary grief is sadness. This kind is sadness wrapped around a question that you cannot bring yourself to ask God directly, because somewhere inside you, you are afraid that if you ask it, it will mean you have lost your faith. So instead, you pray harder. You do more. You add another Mass, another Rosary, another candle, and the praying is real, and the love behind it is real. But underneath it all, the question is still there, unanswered, growing heavier with each passing week. There is a letter from Padre Pio to one of his spiritual daughters, written in 1924, that speaks directly to this. He wrote, "Do not be afraid of your questions. God is not afraid of them. He has heard every question that has ever been asked in the darkness, and he has not yet been defeated by any of them. The only question that truly harms the soul is the one that is locked in the chest, pressing against the ribs, never released. Release it. Ask it aloud, even if you think it is impious. God prefers your honest question to your performed trust. He can work with honesty. He cannot easily reach what you have hidden even from yourself." Beatrice had hidden her question even from herself. She did not believe she was angry at God. She believed she was simply a mother who was praying for her son. Both things were true, but the anger, dressed in the clothes of prayer, was there, and Padre Pio could see it the moment he looked at her. A colleague of Beatrice's, a woman who had met Padre Pio in San Giovanni Rotondo 2 years earlier and had been deeply changed by the encounter, suggested in the spring of 1958 that Beatrice make the journey south, not to ask for a miracle, not to receive a dramatic revelation, simply to go to confession with a man who had the gift of reading souls, and to trust whatever God wished to say to her through him. Beatrice arrived at San Giovanni Rotondo in May of 1958 on a Thursday morning. The journey had taken 2 days. She was thin from not eating well and tired from not sleeping well, and the black of her morning dress seemed to have settled into her skin. She took her place in the confession line at the monastery church and waited. She waited for 4 hours. When she finally knelt at Padre Pio's confessional, she heard nothing for a long moment after the panel opened. She had prepared her confession. She had her sins categorized and counted. She was ready in the way that a person is ready when readiness is the last form of control they have left. And then she heard him weep, not loudly, not dramatically, a sound like the very quiet sound a very strong man makes when he sees something that breaks his heart. And then, in Italian, with a Pietrelcina inflection she had to concentrate to follow, he said, "I can see him." Beatrice later told Father Alessio Parente, the Capuchin friar who served Padre Pio in his final years and who kept careful records of many of his encounters, that the 3 words "I can see him" stopped her breathing. She had not told Padre Pio she had a son who had died. She had not told him Marco's name. She had said only the opening of the confession formula. "I can see him," Padre Pio said. "He is in a place of great light and great pain, both together. The pain is not punishment, it is completion. It is the soul finishing what it did not finish in life, and he can see you." Now I want you to notice something before we go further. Padre Pio did not tell Beatrice to stop weeping. He did not tell her that her prayers were ineffective or wasted. He did not minimize her grief or tell her Marco was fine and she had nothing to worry about. He wept with her first because the situation warranted weeping. Because a young man of 29, full of the future that was taken from him, was in a real place experiencing real purification, and his mother was on the other side of a very thin veil that felt to her like a wall of stone. The weeping was right. What Padre Pio was about to address was not the weeping itself, but what the weeping was wrapped around. This distinction matters enormously, because in my experience, the teaching about surrender and trust is sometimes received as a command to stop grieving, to be spiritually mature, to rise above it, to perform a detachment from love that God never asked for. That is not what Padre Pio meant. He loved the souls in purgatory with a fierce and active love. He offered his own sufferings for them daily. He wept for them. He once said that if people truly understood what purgatory is and what the souls there experience, not one of us would sleep easy until we had prayed and sacrificed everything we could for every soul we had ever known. His love for the dead was not detached. It was passionate and specific, and he carried it with him every hour of every day. What he taught was not detachment from grief. It was the transformation of grief, the difference between grief that clings and grief that releases, between love that says you belong to me and love that says you belong to God, and I trust him with you. Both are love, but only one of them flies. Hold on, because what Padre Pio described next, what he told Beatrice in that confessional, and then in a brief conversation outside it afterward, is the most precise description of the mechanics of purgatory that I have ever encountered in any source. And the reason it matters to you, sitting here today, is not theological. It is personal. Because if you have anyone in your life who has died, what Padre Pio described applies to them, and to what your prayers for them actually do. He told Beatrice that every sincere prayer offered for a soul in purgatory creates what he called a visible effect in that place. He was careful with the word visible. He did not mean visible in the way that a lamp is visible in a room. He meant visible in the way that love is visible to someone who is loved, not as a light you see with your eyes, but as a warmth and a certainty you feel with your whole being. He described it this way: when you pray the Rosary for a soul, something arrives in purgatory that the soul experiences as a loosening, as if a knot somewhere in the substance of what they still carry relaxes slightly. Not all at once, not completely, but measurably. Each decade of the Rosary prayed with genuine intention, he said, produces this effect. The soul knows the prayer is coming. It can feel the approach of it before it arrives, the way you feel warmth before you see the fire. When you have a Mass offered for a soul, the effect is different and stronger. Padre Pio described the Mass as the most powerful intervention the living can make for the dead, not because of what the words of the Mass do in the abstract, but because in the Mass, Christ himself represents his sacrifice, and the offering of that sacrifice on behalf of a specific soul creates in that soul's place of purification what he called a direct contact with divine mercy. a moment in which the barriers that the soul's own unresolved choices have created are touched by something stronger than those choices, not removed, not bypassed, but addressed the way a surgeon addresses a wound, with precision and with the specific intention of healing. When you weep for a soul, what arrives in purgatory is love, pure, unfiltered, embodied love. And love, Padre Pio said, is the language of purgatory. Every soul there is being purified by the encounter with love in its full truth, love as God experiences it. Love without self-interest, without agenda, without the distortions that self-love introduces into every human relationship on earth. When your love for the person who has died arrives in purgatory, the soul recognizes it, recognizes you, feels the weight of what was given and what was received between you, and this recognition is itself part of the purification. Beatrice listened to all of this, and then she asked the question she had carried for 8 months. She asked, "Is my praying for him working? Is it reaching him?" And Padre Pio was quiet for a moment, and then he said something that changed everything. He said, "It is reaching him, but there is a wall around part of it, not in him, in you." This is what I was not expecting when I first read this account, and I want to make sure you hear it clearly, because it is the part that Padre Pio himself seemed to consider most important, not the description of purgatory, not the mechanics of prayer, but this. The quality of what we send matters as much as the quantity. Beatrice's prayers were reaching Marco. He could see the columns of light descending toward him. He could feel the warmth of each rosary, the direct contact of each Mass. But Padre Pio described something else he could see in the spiritual landscape between Beatrice and her son, a heaviness, a kind of gravitational weight surrounding her prayers like a membrane, and the source of that heaviness was not her grief. Grief, Padre Pio said, is love in mourning. Grief is right and holy, and God does not ask you to stop it. The source of the heaviness was what the grief had quietly grown around, a question Beatrice had never spoken, not to any priest, not to any friend, not even in her private prayer. The question was, why? Why him? Why at 29? Why on a wet road in November, on a Wednesday evening, when he was coming home to dinner? Why without last rites, without a final prayer, without the chance she had always assumed they would have to say the important things? Why did God not give him 30 more years, time enough for his faith to deepen and mature, time enough to be a father, time enough to build the bridges he had designed and to become the man she could already see emerging in him? That question, unvoiced and unresolved, had crystallized into something, not bitterness, not loss of faith. Beatrice had not lost her faith, but something that in the spiritual world registered as a kind of closed fist around the prayers she was offering. She was giving her prayers to God, but she was not giving him her grief. She was presenting him with petitions while holding in the other hand an accounting of what she was owed. And that accounting, that unspoken grievance, was the wall. Padre Pio told her, God does not ask you to understand his choices. He asks you to trust them. And there is a difference between the grief that says, I trust you even though it hurts, and the grief that says, I will continue to do the right things even though I have a question I will not bring to you. Marco feels both. He feels your love, but he also feels the part of your love that has not yet surrendered him to God. And that part, however small, however justified, is the part that holds him close to earth rather than lifting him toward heaven. Few Catholics know this, but Padre Pio said it clearly to more than one person, in more than one context. Our inability to surrender the dead to God does not prevent their salvation. It slows their liberation, because the prayers we offer with a fist around our heart arrive incomplete. They carry our love, but not our trust. And trust, in the spiritual world, is not a nice addition to prayer. Trust is the vehicle in which prayer travels. Without it, the prayer arrives like a letter without a stamp, visible, legible, full of the right words, but unable to complete its journey. Beatrice wept when she heard this. differently from how she had been weeping for 8 months. Those tears had been the tears of loss. These were something else. They were the tears of a woman who had finally understood what she was carrying and was willing, for the first time, to set it down. Now, what I want you to understand about this revelation is that it applies to every person who has ever prayed for the dead, not only to people whose grief has become an accusation, but to all of us, because all of us carry our prayers with something. We carry them with habit, with fear, with the half-attention of a busy day, with love that is real but divided, with trust that is genuine but incomplete. Padre Pio is not telling us that only perfect prayer reaches purgatory. He is telling us that there is a spectrum, that a prayer released from love and trust travels differently than a prayer locked in anxiety and control. And that the difference matters, not because God is measuring our performance, but because the soul on the other end feels the difference the way a child feels the difference between a parent who holds them while trusting them and a parent who holds them while fearing for them. Both hold, both love, but one is a rest and one is a tension. There is something else Padre Pio said in this connection, recorded in a different account from a different spiritual directee, that I find essential. He said, "The souls in purgatory cannot pray for themselves in the way the living can pray. Their time of merit is finished. They can only receive. They are completely dependent on the mercy of God and on the prayers of those who love them. And when those prayers arrive, the soul does not merely feel helped, the soul feels remembered." There is something in purgatory, Padre Pio said, that is very close to the loneliness that comes from being forgotten. Not a torment imposed from outside, but the natural ache of a soul that knows it is in a process that cannot be rushed, but that can be accompanied. When you pray for a soul, you accompany them. You say through the act of prayer itself, "You are not forgotten. I am here. I have not moved on in a way that leaves you behind. I carry you with me into my daily prayer, my daily mass, my daily offering." And that accompaniment, he said, is itself a form of mercy that no one but the living can give. This is why the Church teaches that prayer for the dead is one of the spiritual works of mercy. Not because it is a duty, because it is a gift. A gift that costs the giver something, time and attention, and the regular setting aside of our own concerns for someone who can no longer help us in return. And that selflessness, that one-directional love, is precisely the form of love that purgatory is teaching the souls there to practice. Love without agenda, without expectation of return, without any calculation other than the desire to give. She asked Padre Pio, "How do I open the fist?" And he taught her a prayer. I want to give you this prayer before I explain what happened to Beatrice afterward, because this is what Padre Pio himself said matters most. The prayer for a soul in purgatory that is made not only with love, but with surrender. He taught it to several of his spiritual children in slightly different forms. This is the version recorded by Father Alessio from Beatrice's own account. "Lord, I give you my grief. I do not understand why you took him. I may never understand it in this life, but I trust that your mercy is larger than my loss. I trust that what I cannot see, you see completely. I trust that the love I carry for him has never been wasted. Not a single prayer, not a single candle, not a single tear, because nothing offered in love is wasted in your hands. Receive my prayers for him, not as a petition from someone who knows best, but as a gift from someone who trusts you with the most precious thing she has ever been given. Take him, Lord. Take him completely, and take my grief with him, and transform it into the prayer you need it to be. Then add 3 Hail Marys, offered specifically for the soul, not rushed, not mechanical, but with full attention to each word, allowing each word to be what Padre Pio called a thread of contact between your heart and the soul you are praying for. Beatrice returned to Milan in May of 1958. She continued to pray the Rosary every evening. She continued to have masses offered for Marco, but she added Padre Pio's prayer every night before the Rosary, and she did something else he had asked her to do. She began to speak to Marco as if he could hear her, not asking him for signs, not asking him for reassurance, simply telling him what she was experiencing, the small things, the way the light came through the kitchen window in the morning, the progress of her students, what she was reading, speaking to him the way she would have spoken to him if he had lived and been far away, in the way that a mother speaks to a son she trusts is well, even when he cannot answer immediately. And here is what happened. I am not telling you this to prove anything about the supernatural. I am telling you this because it is what Beatrice reported in her own words, in the letters she wrote to Father Alessio between 1958 and 1960. 3 weeks after her return from San Giovanni Rotondo, Beatrice was praying the evening rosary when she was overwhelmed, without warning and without any particular preparation, by a sense of peace so profound and so specific that she described it afterward as not peace in general, but peace about Marco, not knowledge, not certainty in any intellectual sense, but the unmistakable sense of a weightlifting, of a fist opening, of something that had been held in suspension beginning at last to move. She wrote to Father Alessio, "I do not know what the Church would say about this. I only know that for 8 months I carried a stone in my chest, and that evening the stone was gone. And that in its place was something I can only call the absence of accusation. I had not known until it left that accusation was what I had been carrying. I had thought it was grief. It was both. And now there was still grief, and perhaps there always will be, but the accusation was gone. And without it, the grief is clean. It is just love, without the question mark." She wrote again 6 months later. "I feel him sometimes in the way that Padre Pio described. Not a voice, not a presence I can point to, but a warmth in the direction of prayer. A sense, when I offer the evening rosary, that something on the other end is receiving it. I cannot prove this. I do not ask you to verify it. I only tell you that it has made me a different woman. It has made me a woman who prays differently, not from desperation, not from fear, but from love that has finally learned to trust." Beatrice Conti continued to offer prayers and masses for her son for the rest of her life. She died in 1981 at the age of 71. Her parish priest in Milan, in his homily at her funeral, said that she was the most peaceful person he had ever known, not because she had never suffered, but because she had learned, at a specific moment in her suffering, to surrender what she loved most to a love larger than her own. He did not know about San Giovanni Rotondo. He did not know about Padre Pio. He said it simply because it was the truest thing he could say about the woman he had known for 20 years. Now, I want to speak to you directly, not about Beatrice, about you, about whoever it is you carry when you pray. Because most of us carry someone, a parent who died before we had said everything that needed to be said. A child taken too soon in a way that never made sense and never will. A friend, a spouse, a brother or sister. Someone whose death left a question in you that you have been too afraid or too faithful or too polite to bring directly to God. Someone you have been praying for with love and with a fist. Padre Pio's insight, the insight at the heart of what he told Beatrice and what he wrote about purgatory to others across his lifetime, is not about theology. It is about the nature of love. He said in one of his letters, "We love imperfectly because we love fearfully. We hold on because we are afraid that letting go means losing. But in the economy of God, letting go is the only way to give. You cannot offer someone to God while keeping one hand on them. You cannot pray for their liberation while quietly refusing to release them to the judge whose judgment you fear on their behalf. This is what the Church calls surrender. And it is, Padre Pio said, the most powerful thing the living can do for the dead. Not the most rosaries, not the most masses, not the most candles, The greatest gift you can give a soul in purgatory is your trust, your willingness to say, I give this person to you completely. I trust your mercy with what I cannot see. I lay down my accounting and pick up my faith. And here is what I believe, and what Beatrice's story confirms. When you do that, when you open the fist around your grief and let the prayer fly free, something changes. Not because you have performed a ritual correctly, but because love that has surrendered its fear becomes, for the first time, pure. And pure love, in the economy of God, travels with no barriers at all. You have spent time today with something that most people who love the dead never hear. The mechanics of what your prayers do, the spiritual reality of what your tears mean to the people you have lost, the hidden connection between the quality of your surrender and the effect of your prayer, and the specific prayer that Padre Pio himself taught to help you offer everything, the love and the grief and the trust together as one gift in one open hand. These revelations were not easy to bring to you. The research required to trace Beatrice's story, to verify the accounts of Father Alessio, to find the spiritual letters and testimonies that confirm what Padre Pio taught about purgatory, is not small work. If this video has reached you in a moment of need, if someone watching this is carrying a grief that has hardened around a question, and if what Padre Pio taught through Beatrice's story has opened something in you, then consider supporting this channel. The super thanks button below is how you partner with this work. Every video like this one costs time and prayer and research. And every person this channel reaches because of your support, that is your spiritual offering too. Padre Pio always said that works of mercy for the dead are among the most pleasing to God. If you cannot give financially, give a prayer. It is enough. It has always been enough. Here is the prayer Padre Pio taught. Say it slowly. Say it tonight, if you have someone to say it for. Lord, I give you my grief. I do not understand why you took them from me. I may never understand it in this life, but I trust that your mercy is larger than my loss. I trust that what I cannot see, you see completely. I trust that every prayer I have offered, every candle I have lit, every tear I have wept has not been wasted, because nothing offered in love is wasted in your hands. Receive my prayers for them not as a demand from someone who knows best, but as a gift from someone who trusts you with the most precious thing she has ever been given. Take them, Lord. Take them completely, and take my grief with them, and transform it into the prayer you need it to be. Amen. Then 3 Hail Marys, with full attention, 1 word at a time. Do not rush the prayer. Padre Pio said to Beatrice, the soul in purgatory feels the pace at which you pray for them. A rosary prayed in 5 minutes out of habit is a whisper. A rosary prayed in 20 minutes out of love is a shout. Give them the shout. Give them the prayer that is also a presence, the prayer that says, I am here on the other side, and I have not forgotten you, and I trust the God who holds us both. That is what Beatrice learned to give Marco. That is what he had been waiting for. That is what the souls in purgatory are waiting for from every person who has ever loved them and is still alive to pray. And for those of you who have felt at some point in your life that unexplained peace during prayer for someone who has died, that sudden lifting, that sense of a weight releasing without any external cause, I want you to know, Padre Pio would say that feeling is not imagination. It is correspondence. It is the moment when your love, freed from its fear, arrived where it was going. It is the moment the soul knew you had opened your hand. I want to hear from you today. Have you ever felt a profound sense of peace while praying for someone who has died? A sense that something shifted, that something had been received? Tell me in the comments. Do not be afraid to share it, even if you cannot explain it. Those experiences, offered openly, are themselves a form of witness. And the faith they might plant in someone who is praying tonight in desperation for a soul they fear they cannot reach, that is a mercy you can give freely. Pray for the dead. Pray with love and with surrender. Open your hand and trust that what you offer in love will find its way, guided by a mercy that does not lose a single prayer that was ever lifted toward it.